Great.
Welcome to Vestibular Workshops. So we're here today to talk about the VOR. So maybe you see patients with dizziness or poor posture. They might have chronic neck pain, dizziness. They could have bad balance or anxiety or disequilibrium. And you know that somehow they're probably all related, or at least some of them. And you've probably heard of the vestibular system. And you may have already heard of the VOR. V-O-R. That's the vestibular ocular response. Okay, so vestibular means something comes in from the end organ and it goes out through the eyes, and response is like the reflex, or it's a reflex, which just means it happens automatically. And you may have done therapy that involves any one of the three receptors that go into the vestibular system, whether it's the end organs, the visual system. I'm just going to draw a little optokinetic tape there. That's just a bit of tape we use to simulate vestibular movement or visual movement, or work with the body. Movement, muscles, deep pressure, balance, spinning, or put someone on a balance board. Then you've probably checked outputs. So number one might be the outputs to the brain. And they're all kinds of things. They're just different skills and abilities that relate to being able to move and detect movement. You may have checked the body, which is just checking the output. Number one, number two. But today we're actually going to talk about number three, which is the output to the eyes or the ocular system. And that's the VOR. So what I like to do when I'm trying to understand anything is start with the why. And then after that, look at the how and the what. So it's really only, so let's start with the why of the VOR. So if there's two things that humans can do, take to the bank that they can do, it's be incredible. We're such incredible machines and so many other things. It's also our ability to take it for granted. And it's only really people who can't walk or see straight or move without dizziness or their world bouncing around that suddenly and acutely care about vestibular function. So let's just pick the two things that the eyes need to do. The eyes need to, number one, lock on a target. And number two, move to a new target. So we're going to be talking about the ability of the eyes to lock on a target while the head is moving. And that is the VOR. So we'll now in on the VOR. So the VOR deals with really fast movements. So fast and short amplitude. And that's in rotation. Okay, fast, so about 2,000 degrees per second, and short amplitude, 5 to 20 degrees. These are just the things that happen in normal movement, like walking and moving your head around in normal life. So the VOR's job, its role, is to detect them and respond by moving the eyes. And that it responds by moving the fovea. And the fovea, if you look at the retina, if you're looking straight, that's the back of the eye, and the back of the eyeball, it's only about 6 degrees. So if that was half the eyeball, that would be 180 degrees. So it's only 6 degrees. Now, if you move 2 degrees off that, now if you want to know what 2 degrees is like, just stretch your fingers out from your head as far as they go. It's about 2 finger widths. 2 finger widths, which is not much at all. You lose about 50% of the detail. And your brain just doesn't like that. So that can lead to a whole bunch of symptoms that we talked about earlier. So that's why the VOR is so important, because this happens all the time. So the eyes have to move fast. They have to move exactly. And they have to move in an equal and opposite direction. To say it differently, or to give it the words that you might find in a science textbook, the latency. So that's ready, set, go. The gain and the phase. There's some of the words you'll hear in the textbook. So let's have a little look at this gain. And this is a word that's come up in a few of the questions I've gotten lately in my inbox. Why is gain something that we don't want to see in most other neurological systems, but it's so important in the VOR? I hope you never have to experience that confusion ever again. So basically what we're looking at is if we have the eyes straight ahead, here's the nose, and we're going to turn the head this way, and the eyes are going to turn too, we really want the eyes to stay on that target. So the head is going to move, say, 30 degrees. And the eyes themselves are going to have to move, draw the same picture. So the eyes are still facing forward. The eyes with respect to the head are going to move 30 degrees to keep the eyes on target. So that would be a gain of 1 to 1. One lot to that, or actually it would be 30 to 30, which we know is equal to 1 to 1. Okay, hope that clears that up. The phase is basically your eyes are moving in exactly the opposite direction. So it's the ideal phase is going to be exactly 180 degrees. So you can have phases that don't quite match up. So the eyes just don't move real smoothly. Not so important, really hard to observe bedside. What you can learn to observe pretty quickly is this one. This one. And the last thing we look at is symmetry. From left VOR to right VOR. Now, and that's of the slow phase, which is this phase. Now, there are other tests we can do to test the VOR in the lab, but obviously we're probably most concerned with the ones we can do bedside. Another one that's worth looking at is just the dynamic visual acuity test, which is where you have the patient, this is the strict test, you have them look and fixate on something, and the practitioner passively turns the head short and fast at a frequency of 2 Hertz, randomly, and you see if the patient loses their ability to see the numbers on a chart. Now, I'm just going to go through briefly what that looks like. 2 Hertz, which is 2 rotations per second. Okay, so 2 rotations per second is the same as 1 rotation in 1 second. Or sorry, 1 rotation in half a second, which is the same as half a rotation in a quarter of a second, which is the same as a quarter of a rotation in 1/8 of a second, which is the same as 1/16 of a rotation in 1/32 of a second. So that's pretty fast. So that's 45 degrees really quickly. And the VOR is we're only really testing it over this range here. We went through in the other earlier slide. The range we're testing is this low range, so 5 degrees to about 20. So that's still not even half of that. So really, really quick and fast and sharp while still being gentle. So let's have a look at the how. All right, so in your inner ear, so if we look from the top, we have aligned That's our semicircular canal. So if you look at the semicircular canal, I'll do it like so. It's aligned like this. Now there's fluid in here, and there is a membrane, and there's hair cells. And then there's a vestibular nerve that has a resting action potential. One of the cool things about the vestibular system is it's always on, so it's constant input. So when you move just a little bit, so if you enlarge these hair cells, you have the top tall cell. If you move just a little bit, basically the fluid will push this. Fluid pushes that way, so if you turn this way, fluid pushes that way, or stays the same, pushes against the hair cell. And if the hair cell bends backwards, little channels open up in the neuron, and this action potential fires off a lot more, which increases the signal to the brainstem. Conversely, if you go in the other direction, you're going to get an action potential that you're going to get less action potentials, resulting in a decreased signal to the vestibular nuclei. So what I've already drawn for you here is the circuitry of the right VOR. So when we take the head and turn it to the right, we've got, originally we have this resting membrane potential. We're going to have a turn to the right. The fluid is going to push the hair cells, so they're going to open up. It's going to lead to a bigger action potential, which is going to go into the vestibular nuclei via the cerebellum, which is important for calibration later. Then it's going to provide a signal to turn the eyes in an equal and opposite direction if it's calibrated properly. So for the right VOR, that's taking the eyes to the left. Okay, so we're going to use the right. The signal is going to go up to the right medial rectus nuclei, which is then going to travel down to the right medial rectus muscle. Also, it's going to go to the left lateral rectus muscle. And then what's going to happen is they're going to contract and the eyes are going to go to the left. And that is the how of the right VOR. Simple. So actually testing the VOR, and that's the what, is really quite simple. You hold the patient, have the patient standing in front of you, hold their head, take them quickly to one side or to the right in that small amount of time and small amount of rotation, and you should see some things happen. So I like to look at it as in what should happen and what should not happen. So what should happen is the eyes should move in an equal and opposite direction in the orbit. Again, 1 to 1. There should be a symmetry, which is left is about the same as the right. Now what should not happen, this is probably a bigger list, and this is something you can really observe for clinically to see if that system is working well, or if all the other things that are depending on a good VOR are working well. So what shouldn't happen? The eyes don't move smoothly. They move too far, or they don't move enough. So poor movement. Anything less than a 1-to-1 gain. So it could be high or it could be low. There are extra movements. So if you have a low gain, so say 0.5 to 1, what you're going to see is the eyes are going to move slower. So you're going to see a catch-up saccade, or a special extra movement, a fast movement to get the eyes back on track. And you can observe this if you learn to look for it. Or you test the reflex and it changes over time. Or you test the reflex and other things happen like body movements. So the arms might move. You might see an ATNR which is a neck response, a primitive reflex. Or you could test other domains related to the vestibular system, so balance, cognition, or affect domains, and see that they change before and after. They're different. So that's what should not happen. And just to give you a bit more extra scope, there are other VORs, a translational VOR. There's also you can do VORs in the oblique planes. So that's these planes here, not just this one. You can, when you get proficient at observing it, you can look for more subtlety and nuance. And you can use this as a test to determine if it's present and what therapies help improve it or degrade it. So you kind of know where you're on track. So we'll cover that a lot. We'll cover that in a lot more depth in our workshops and later in some of our videos that we'll release to you guys. And we look forward to seeing you in our next video.